of survivor, being a survivor, and a thriver, if that is a word, actually. Maybe tonight it's a word. It started almost 10 years ago. I have asthma, and if there's any asthmatics in the room, sometimes that comes with allergies, and this was definitely the case with me. About 10 years ago, I was sneezing every single morning, and it went away in the afternoon, but I was just kind of sick of it. So I just decided to say, you know what, let's go to the doctor, let's do the right thing, and maybe we can get some Claritin, actually, because Claritin, back then, was not over the counter. Times have changed. So as I was talking to the doctor, and he was just going through some of the checkpoints, because I was and am an asthmatic, he listened to my lungs, making sure everything sounded good. And he started to feel around my neck, which I actually thought was a little bizarre. Didn't know why that was the case, but I didn't ask any questions either. And he all of a sudden said, there's a lump there. And I'm like, well, perhaps that's my Adam's apple, because, I was 28, so I basically had one at that point. Sorry, guys, I cope with humor. My apologies in advance. But what I found out and came to know is that this was the thyroid area. So the next point in the process is to get a biopsy. And in the biopsy, basically they stick a needle in your neck. And they said one of those things that sticks in my head. They said, okay, just make sure you don't swallow. And of course, what happens is that's all you think about. And I had to call out basically every time I was going to swallow, so I don't even know what they did. But we got through it. And I found out shortly after that I did have cancer. However, if anyone is familiar with thyroid cancer, there's a few different types. There's one that gets right into the lymph nodes, which is it's quite an accelerant, actually. Thankfully, mine was a slow mover. And that's why they didn't hesitate with saying, you can wait a couple months before we have any kind of surgery. But it was the summertime, and we were going on a family vacation up north. And there was a few things that we had to weigh. Of course, because anyone who's had cancer just knows that you want to get it out of your system as soon as you can. And that was my mentality. However, gotta listen to the doc. He said, okay, you can do that. However, you're not going to go on vacation because you're going to be recovering. You're not going to be yourself. And I definitely couldn't golf, which, not that I'm a great golfer, but it's fun. And I love golfing with my family. So we decided to hold off, and I did not golf that well, but we did go up north. And I had the surgery, I think a few days after that. So when I did find out that I had cancer, we immediately, my wife and I, Vicki, we went to my parents' house because my dad is a survivor of 30 years plus. Dad, I'm not sure how many years, kidney cancer. And he's here tonight. So he gave me some good advice that he had to go through. He said, basically get the emotion out of your system, and you can see it's still in my system tonight, clearly. But once you get that out of your system, you've got to focus on beating this. And I appreciate that. To talk a little bit more about the thyroid itself, it's actually a gland, and you have thyroid cells throughout your body. Thankfully for me, with that slow-moving form of cancer, I didn't have to go through chemo. I didn't have to go through any radiation of any sort. As my doctor, my surgeon, Dr. Gary Stewart, who's excellent. If anyone knows him, he's the best. He said, well, what you have is a special kind of treatment, and you have what we call the magic bullet. Thyroid cancer can be treated by a radioactive iodine pill that you take once. And that's exactly what I had to do. I took a pill once, and it was interesting because the nurse that gave it to me, I was basically radioactive at that point, so I'm not, protected at all, but she's got the whole getup. And I'm like, is this supposed to happen? She's like, oh yeah. And she's giving me the pill in a pill bottle with an extension. She's not even close to me. And yeah, it was bizarre. So unfortunately, I was away from my wife for the weekend, but fortunately for me, guys, the timing was excellent because the smell of fall leaves were in the air and the pigskin was flying. It was college football weekend.
Amen.
So I was able to watch football the whole weekend, and I did. But also after that, because I was radioactive, I had to clean every nook and cranny of our apartment to make sure that everything was sterile and there wasn't any residuals. I even asked the question like, okay, as I'm driving home from the hospital and I'm at a stoplight, should I be worried because someone will be literally like 3 feet away from me? And they said, no, they should be okay. I mean, who knows, right? Hopefully they are. And, I'm totally going not with my notes, so my apologies. So let's talk about a little bit more about the thyroid. And the thyroid is very small. It's basically the first knuckle of your thumb, and it's shaped like a butterfly. Basically what they told me going into the surgery was, well, one of two things could happen. We're going to take a little chunk of your thyroid, and then we're going to send it to the lab while I'm still under, and we're going to see if it can be determined that it's malignant or not. He said 9 times out of 10 what happens is we don't find out until a couple days later, and then we have to go back in and do a second surgery. Amazingly, they found out during the test while I was under that it was cancerous, so they took the whole thyroid out completely. And I know I was all drugged up when I got done with this, but I was just amazed when they said, your thyroid's gone. I'm like, really? Now I don't have to go back in again. That certainly propelled the recovery process. So basically at that point I was off of work for 3 weeks. Today I've now graduated to once a year treatments, that's it. And a treatment, guys, is like a blood test. So I'm totally blessed that that's really all it is at this point. I do have to take a thyroid pill every day, it's called Synthroid. So the rest of my life will be on, it's actually 2 pills. But what happens with when you don't have a thyroid, it takes your brain 3 weeks before it realizes, hey, I don't have a thyroid anymore. So then at that point it takes another 3 weeks before your medication kicks in. So after this you can certainly, and I encourage every one of you to ask my wife how nice of a gentleman I was over those 6 weeks.
More like a year.
I'm sorry, is this an intervention? No, she's right. And I truly was not myself for a good year. But your thyroid gland really is the regulator in your body. It covers your metabolism, but it also covers your emotional state, I would say. So I was super tired. I mean, you felt like right now I could just pass out and just, well, not from anxiety, but from just the fatigue of not having a thyroid. So it's very different and very strange, and it's nothing I felt before. But we got through it, and that's the positive thing. With the help of doctors and support of the family, it's been excellent. I think we're on the second page now. That's amazing. Yeah, so basically throughout the years, certainly after about a year or so, you get a number of scans and whatnot. But it's all pretty much routine at that point. My blood test gets taken now once a year. That's just to keep my medication regulated so that the thyroid cells don't have any shot of coming back. And we haven't had any scares yet, so that's good, as we're approaching 10 years. Other than that, thank you. The hope tonight, with a little bit of humor, is that hopefully you've learned a little bit about my story, your thyroid. Don't be alarmed, but just see your doctor at least annually and just check things out. For me, it was just allergies. That's it. But I'm not trying to scare anyone. Just be consistent with seeing a doctor. And thank you.